Boeing's factory floor, a labyrinth of steel and innovation, hummed with a muted intensity as engineers and technicians moved like cogs in a machine. Among them was Elena Torres, a senior design engineer with a reputation for precision and an unrelenting drive for perfection. For nearly a decade, she had been the backbone of some of Boeing's most ambitious projects, earning her a seat at the table in the design of their flagship Dreamliner series. But today, as she stared at the blueprints in her hand, her usually confident demeanor faltered. Something wasn't right. Elena's suspicion had been growing for weeks. Small anomalies, tiny deviations in the manufacturing process, had begun to surface in internal reports. Alone, each issue seemed insignificant, a misaligned panel here, an unusual strain on a component there. But together, they painted a troubling picture. And now, she held the evidence in her hands, a structural flaw in one of the Dreamliner's critical support systems. It wasn't catastrophic yet, but it had the potential to spiral into something far worse. Across the table, Ryan Caldwell, Boeing's charismatic head of production, leaned back in his chair, his signature smirk dimmed. Ryan had built his career on pushing boundaries and meeting deadlines, often at the cost of sleepless nights and strained relationships. To him, this new problem was just another obstacle to conquer. "Elena," he began, his voice a mix of frustration and forced calm, "we're too far along to backtrack now. Adjustments like this? They'll set us back months. Do you know what that means for our delivery commitments?" Elena's jaw tightened. "I know exactly what it means, Ryan. But if we don't address this now, we're risking something far worse down the line. This isn't just a scheduling issue, it's a safety issue." Her voice carried an edge, but beneath it was a plea for reason. The tension between them was palpable, mirrored in the restless energy of the room. Around the table sat a mix of stakeholders, project managers, financial analysts, and safety officers, each grappling with the weight of the moment. The stakes were immense. The Dreamliner wasn't just another aircraft. It was Boeing's answer to mounting competition, a beacon of their engineering prowess and a promise to shareholders that the company could still lead the industry. As the debate unfolded, another figure watched from the corner of the room. Christopher Zhang, a young systems analyst fresh out of MIT, had joined the team only a few months ago. Though his role was minor, his sharp mind and keen observation had earned him respect among the veterans. Quietly, he flipped through pages of data on his tablet, his brow furrowing. Something Elena had said struck a chord, but the numbers on his screen painted an even grimmer picture. He hesitated, unsure if it was his place to speak, but the gravity of what he'd discovered compelled him. "Excuse me," Christopher said, his voice cutting through the heated discussion. All eyes turned to him, some with curiosity, others with thinly veiled impatience. He swallowed hard and continued, "I've been running simulations on the latest data, and the issue Elena's flagged isn't isolated. If this flaw goes unaddressed, it could lead to systemic failures under specific flight conditions. The probability isn't high, but the consequences," he trailed off, letting the weight of his words hang in the air. Ryan exhaled sharply, rubbing his temples. "Great. So now we're dealing with hypotheticals. Do you know how many low-probability scenarios we encounter every year? If we stopped for every single one, we'd never build another plane." Elena shot him a glare. "And do you know what happens when those low probabilities become reality? Lives are lost, and we're left picking up the pieces. Do you want another PR nightmare on your hands?" The room fell silent. The memory of past incidents, ones that had tarnished Boeing's reputation and shaken public trust, lingered like a ghost. They all knew what was at stake, not just for the company but for the passengers who placed their faith in Boeing's name. As the meeting adjourned, Elena and Christopher lingered behind. She looked at him with a mix of gratitude and determination. "Thank you for speaking up," she said. "I know it wasn't easy, but you might have just saved us from something much worse." Christopher nodded, his confidence bolstered by her acknowledgement. "I just hope they listen." Later that evening, Elena sat alone in her office, the city lights casting long shadows across her desk. The decision ahead weighed heavily on her. She could push harder, risk alienating Ryan and others in leadership, or she could stay silent and hope for the best. But hope wasn't a strategy she believed in. Picking up her phone, she dialed a number she hadn't called in years. "Alex," she said when the line clicked. "I need your help." Alex Romero, a former Boeing engineer turned independent consultant, was one of the few people Elena trusted implicitly. If anyone could help her navigate this storm, it was him. The next morning, Alex walked into Boeing's headquarters with the air of someone who had nothing to prove. His presence turned heads. His departure from the company years ago had been under contentious circumstances, and his return now felt almost symbolic. He greeted Elena with a firm handshake and a knowing smile. "So," he said, "what are we dealing with?" Elena quickly brought him up to speed, laying out the data and the stakes. Alex listened intently, his sharp mind dissecting every detail. "You're right to be concerned," he said finally. "But if we're going to convince the higher-ups, we need more than just probabilities. We need a plan, a way to address this without derailing the entire project." Together, they began to strategize, their conversation punctuated by the occasional burst of inspiration or frustration. By the time the sun set, they had the outline of a solution, a targeted redesign that would address the flaw without requiring a full-scale overhaul. It wasn't perfect, but it was a start. The next day, armed with their findings and a renewed sense of purpose, Elena and Alex presented their proposal to the leadership team. The room was tense, the stakes higher than ever. But as they spoke, something began to shift. Even Ryan, ever the skeptic, seemed to waver. By the end of the meeting, a decision was made. The redesign would move forward, albeit on a tight timeline. It was a gamble, but one that could pay off in ways none of them fully understood yet. As the team dispersed, Elena felt a flicker of hope. The road ahead would be difficult, but for the first time in weeks, she felt they were moving in the right direction. Outside the conference room, Christopher caught up with her. "Do you think it'll be enough?" he asked. Elena smiled faintly. "It has to be." Though the immediate crisis had been averted, the story was far from over. Boeing's challenges loomed large, but so did the opportunity to rise above them. And in the quiet moments that followed, as the team returned to their work, one thing became clear. This wasn't just about fixing a plane. It was about redefining what Boeing could become. The tension within Boeing's halls hadn't completely dissipated. Even with a plan in place, doubts lingered, and whispers of dissent filtered through the corridors. Elena knew this wasn't the time to relax. It was the time to prove that what had been perceived as a debilitating setback could be an opportunity for something far greater. The weight of that belief drove her forward, though she could feel the skepticism pressing in on all sides. In the days following the leadership meeting, Elena worked tirelessly to refine the redesign plan alongside Alex and Christopher. For her, the flaw they had uncovered wasn't just a technical hurdle, it was a wake-up call. Boeing had long thrived on its reputation as a leader in aviation innovation, but cracks were beginning to show, both figuratively and literally. The pressure to meet deadlines and appease shareholders had begun to overshadow the company's core commitment to quality and safety. It was clear to her that addressing the current issue was more than just damage control. It was a chance to reset Boeing's priorities. "This problem, as terrible as it seems, could be exactly what we needed," Alex remarked one evening as they reviewed simulation results. His words, though optimistic, carried an undercurrent of urgency. He pointed to a chart on the screen, detailing how the adjustments would not only solve the immediate flaw but also improve the aircraft's overall efficiency. "This isn't just about patching up mistakes. It's about setting a new standard." Elena nodded. "But we need to show everyone that this isn't just a fix, it's a leap forward. Otherwise, they'll only see delays and costs." Her gaze shifted to Christopher, who had been meticulously compiling data to support their case. "How's the analysis looking?" Christopher's eyes lit up. "Actually, it's better than I thought. By addressing this flaw now, we're not just improving safety margins, we're also increasing fuel efficiency and reducing long-term maintenance costs. The numbers speak for themselves." He paused, then added, "If we position this right, it could redefine how we approach aircraft design altogether." Still, selling that narrative to the rest of the company, and the world, wouldn't be easy. Ryan, for all his bravado, had reluctantly backed the redesign, but his patience was thin. The financial strain of delays loomed large, and shareholders were already demanding answers. As the project progressed, Elena found herself in more heated discussions with Ryan, who couldn't seem to shake his focus on deadlines. "You're asking me to sell optimism when all I see are costs piling up," Ryan said one morning, his frustration spilling over. "Do you know what this is doing to our bottom line? To our credibility with airlines? And do you know what happens if we rush this?" Elena shot back. "We have a chance here to prove that Boeing isn't just chasing profits, it's leading the industry. That's what airlines care about. That's what passengers care about. Safety, reliability, innovation. We can't just talk about those things. We have to show them. Despite their clashes, Ryan couldn't entirely dismiss Elena's conviction. Beneath his pragmatism, he too recognized the long-term potential of turning a crisis into an opportunity. After all, Boeing's legacy had been built on innovation born from adversity, whether it was overcoming engineering challenges during World War II or revolutionizing passenger travel with the 747. The current predicament, though daunting, was no different. As the weeks went on, momentum began to build. The engineering teams, initially hesitant, threw themselves into the redesign with renewed purpose. Elena worked closely with them, fostering an environment where creativity and collaboration thrived. Alex's expertise proved invaluable, and Christopher's data-driven insights kept everyone focused on the bigger picture. Slowly but surely, they began to see the fruits of their labor. The new design wasn't just functional, it was elegant. By reimagining the flawed component, the team had inadvertently unlocked a cascade of improvements throughout the aircraft. Tests showed a marked increase in aerodynamic efficiency, and simulations predicted significant reductions in operating costs for airlines. What had started as a patch job was now becoming a selling point. As the results poured in, even Ryan began to soften. "I'll admit," he said during one meeting, "this is more than I expected. But how do we make the world see it that way? We're still in the shadow of our past mistakes." Elena leaned forward, her eyes steady. "We don't hide from the past, Ryan. We own it. We show them that we've learned, that we're better because of it. This isn't about spinning a story. It's about proving that Boeing is still the standard-bearer for aviation." Ryan considered her words, then nodded. "All right. Let's make it happen." The shift in tone was palpable. Boeing's marketing team was brought in to craft a narrative that framed the redesign as a triumph of engineering and a testament to the company's commitment to safety and innovation. Press releases highlighted the improvements and emphasized Boeing's proactive approach to addressing challenges. Elena was even tapped to speak at an upcoming industry conference, where she would present the redesigned Dreamliner to a room full of skeptics and supporters alike. The day of the presentation arrived quickly. Standing backstage, Elena felt the weight of the moment pressing down on her. The months of relentless effort, the countless arguments and sleepless nights, it had all led to this. But as she stepped onto the stage, her nerves gave way to determination. She began by addressing the flaw directly, sparing no detail in explaining what had gone wrong and why. "Mistakes," she said, her voice clear and steady, "are inevitable in any endeavor as ambitious as ours. But what defines us isn't the mistakes we make, it's how we respond to them." From there, she unveiled the redesigned Dreamliner, walking the audience through its improvements and the rigorous testing it had undergone. She spoke passionately about Boeing's renewed focus on safety and innovation, emphasizing that the company's challenges had only made it stronger. By the time she finished, the room was silent for a moment before erupting into applause. Back at Boeing's headquarters, Ryan watched the live stream of Elena's presentation. For the first time in months, he felt a glimmer of pride, not just in the project, but in the team that had brought it to life. He knew there was still work to be done, still questions to be answered. But for the first time, he believed they were on the right path. Elena returned to her office that evening, exhausted but exhilarated. Christopher was waiting for her, a rare smile on his face. "You nailed it," he said simply. She sank into her chair and let out a long breath. "We all did." Though the redesign had been a success, Elena knew the journey wasn't over. The real test would come when the Dreamliner returned to the skies. But as she looked out at the city lights, she felt something she hadn't in months: hope. What had begun as a crisis was now a turning point, not just for Boeing, but for everyone who had fought to make it better.